Save big with Kroger's 12 Merry Days of Deals. From December 4th through the 15th, you can clip a hot new deal each day on our app or website. And if you're a Boost member, you can save even more. So don't miss out and be sure to check our app or website every day from December 4th through the 15th to clip each day's hot new deal. It's 12 Merry Days of Deals, a holly jolly way to save for the holidays at Kroger.
By the time you're finished listening to this Pepsi Zero Sugar, you'll be 15 seconds closer to kickoff. Stock up now. Bengals game day is so close, you can almost taste it. Bengals watching. Better with Pepsi.
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
We can considerably say all the cobwebs have been blown away this weekend, and we are ready to go again.
Yes. Storm Dara ripping its way through Ireland and the UK, leaving a trail of havoc in its path and getting football matches cancelled. And Liverpool were one of those teams, obviously, who did not play at the weekend. And at the weekend, Manchester City dropped points, so that didn't go well for them. Their comeback didn't last more than one game. Arsenal dropped points as well, Karl. And it means that our draw up at Newcastle is not nearly as bad as people tried to make it out in the aftermath, because should Liverpool beat Everton, they will go back to being 11 points clear of Arsenal and 11 points clear of City and 9 points clear of Arsenal, assuming we match each other's results from here until then.
Yes, not the worst thing in the world whatsoever. Obviously, Chelsea is now our nearest competitor. Whether or not you think they will be across the course of the campaign is a completely different question. And obviously, being on the run that they are, they deserve sort of notoriety, respect, and sort of a careful look at their results along the way. But we've done what we can against them. We already played them earlier on in the season, so there's nothing that we can do at this moment in time regarding them. They've had they would suggest a semi-favourable run of fixtures in the league, but the most recent one wasn't really. Away to Tottenham is always a big game for them and a difficult game for most teams. So I think, again, more evidence of the good job that Enzo Maresca is doing. But in terms of Liverpool, Arsenal and Manchester City, yeah, I mean, we've spoken at length about Arsenal, and personally, I remain of the opinion that they're already out of the title race, regardless of if they'd have won at the weekend or not. This was just further evidence of why. So they're now 7 games from 15 where they have not won, which for a title challenger is not sustainable.
Yeah. Realistically, if Liverpool maintain this type of pace, not even this type of pace, just a strong pace, even with a bit of a drop off, Arsenal have dropped points in too many games. I think Chelsea are a bit fugazi. I get that they went and won at Spurs, so did Ipswich. So I'm not buying too much into that. The significance of that game for me is that Romero and Van de Ven came back from injuries and both got injured again. and we go to play them in a few weeks, and it's very likely they won't have Romero or Van de Ven, and Vicario is out. So, all things considered, it worked out quite well for us. Like, Maresca does deserve credit for the job he's doing at Chelsea without question. I don't know that you can give him too much credit for Spurs being Spurs, though. Like, Spurs gift 2 penalties with absolute brain-dead moments. And one of the other 2 Chelsea goals is a fluke. Like, it's a great finish by Enzo Fernandez, but how the ball gets to him is fluke circumstance. So I think Spurs just gifted Chelsea the win personally with their own stupidity and with the fact that, you go 2-0 up and your mindset is, let's go for the jugular here, rather than being a little bit calmer, a little bit more mature, taking 3 yards off and just trying to be a bit more solid. Like, they coughed up the goal to Sancho quite quickly after going 2-0 up. If they'd been in a better defensive shape, when he picks that ball up, he'd be driving into traffic, not into space. I think Spurs just, the lack of maturity in how Ange is approaching games, like, they're loads of fun to watch, but I watched Ange through his entire time at Celtic, and he wasn't this reckless. He just wasn't this reckless. I don't understand why he's being so reckless with Spurs.
Yeah, I do wonder whether at some point he's just kind of decided to embrace the madness and wonder if, multiple wins will get Tottenham higher up than if they tried to be consistent and just, drew lots of games or were a bit safer and didn't win the games that they possibly could. If you try and outscore and beat half of the league and sort of get your way into the top 6, 7 that way. But at the minute, as we can see from the league table, that's just not really happening for them. They're way too open at the back and a lot of goals being conceded in short spaces of times, as well as just in general, like 19 in 15 games is conceded. It's not going to get you anywhere near Champions League spots, to be honest, when it's so competitive in a year like this. But yeah, in terms of titles and the actual thing that you said at the beginning, that draw at Newcastle, I never once felt like that was a damaging draw, to be honest. I know Newcastle are not exactly flying high themselves, but they are a good side. It is a difficult ground to go to. Even if they've had a really tough run, they still, as we said in the scouted pod, they've not had the greatest results, but it was a really tough run at home, and they make it difficult for teams. They have only lost 2 of their 7 matches at home, despite that tough fixture list. So we were never going to go through the next 30 matches winning them all or whatever. So I don't specifically mind the manner of the draw when we were ahead in the final stages. Yes, I think that could have been better managed. That's really the only irritating part about it. But in isolation, a single draw is never going to be what costs you the title or costs you being in the title race or anything like that. So as long as we show that we did learn from it and move on, I don't really see the issue with any draw in particular, to be honest.
Yeah, so we're now at 3 games where we've dropped points this season. And like you said, both Arsenal and City are now up to 7. Chelsea currently have 6 games where they've dropped points. As we always say, 10 is the maximum. But realistically, if there's a very good team in the league, it's 6 to 8. And we've seen seasons where it's been a little bit less than that. But 6 to 8 is really what you get. Arsenal and City now have little to no wiggle room left. Chelsea have a very small amount left. And we have a considerable amount. We have considerable room for error here. And that's a very promising situation to be in through 14 games. We also now get some lovely rest for our players. The fact that the game was called off at the weekend, that's one less game where we'll have no Ibu, no Ali, no Jota, no Bradley, no Chiesa. They should all be back by the time we play Everton. It does mean Alexis has to have a suspension pushed to Fulham. But frankly, I'd rather him miss Fulham at home than Everton away. And it means that he's also suspended from this Girona game, and he finally gets a break because he's played through multiple injuries so far this season, would go off on international duty, and because he's so important to Scaloni, he would play while injured and then come back to us looking even more rundown. And now he's going to get an extended break because I don't think he plays against, well, he might play against Southampton now rather than going to Spurs with 2.5 weeks without a game under his belt. But it's all very promising for us. And everything has worked out well this weekend. This week we played Girona in the Champions League. And obviously we're doing quite well in the Champions League, sitting pretty at the top of the Champions League table. 5 wins from 5, 15 points. Realistically, one more win will see us qualified for the top 8, the bye through to the last 16. We have our favourable run of fixtures coming now with Girona, Lille and PSV. All teams to be respected, of course. They all qualified for this competition the same way we did by, finishing in the spots in their league tables. In PSV's case, they won their league table. But Girona, Karl, they were the surprise packet probably of Europe last season. Like, they were magnificent for most of the season. They did have one dip in form, but this is a team who in a league with Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and many other giants, they topped the table on 4 different occasions through the first 22 games of last season. They had a dip that dropped them from 1st to 3rd, but then they managed to hold on to 3rd, and they finished the season pretty strong. 5 wins, a draw, and 1 loss from their last 7. What did you make of them last season? You pay a lot more attention to the kind of the way Spanish football is covered than I do. What was your opinion? What was the Spanish media's reaction to this? Because we hadn't really seen a team come from nowhere the way they did last year in quite a while.
It definitely been a while. The way that they played was really fun to watch. It was very attack-minded. It was with a lot of players who had kind of been put together for the year or, over the previous couple of seasons, but still a lot of new signings, a couple of loans in there, that sort of thing. Obviously, we know that they're part of a wider network of clubs, let's say. So there was some aid there in getting a couple of the players, but I think the way that Michel put them together was the biggest part of it. It was really, really good man management. It was obviously fantastic ability to bring team cohesion out. You got a lot of players there who had done well. People like, let's say, Yangel Herrera, for example. He'd had good years before. Porto played in the attacking line. He'd had good years before, but getting them to bring everything together in their best year, basically as individuals, all at the same time was brilliant. There were a couple of massive standouts individually. People like Chankov, for example, who was on the wing. They had Artem Dovbig through the middle. They got sort of partway through the season and just proved an absolute battering ram for them. He was unbelievably good in attack. A lot of defences just couldn't handle him. Alice Garcia in midfield has obviously gone off since then. The coverage of them, I'd say it took quite a while for it to permeate that they warranted coverage because, the national newspapers obviously do focus on the team that they focus on. Simple as that. Mundo Deportivo are just going to be focusing on Barcelona a lot of the time. Marca will focus on Real Madrid and how what other teams do affects Real Madrid. It's just what they do. That's the culture of the paper and so on. So it wasn't, I wouldn't say top billing or anything like that in the way that Leicester's story here was during the year or anything. But obviously as the season went on and they stayed in touch and they were top not that long before the end of the season, obviously it was much more of a thing then. But I do think that there was still not an expectation, but a bit of a dismissive notion towards them that, this year they would not be involved or the people would leave and that sort of thing, because Spanish football does just generally tend to revert to the mean, which is the big 2 and then maybe another 1 or 2. In times gone by, that would have been Depor or Valencia. For a while it was Sevilla. Atletico have obviously put themselves in there over the last sort of decade or whatever, but generally speaking, it's 2 plus whoever.
Yeah. I mean, I remember just, you keeping tabs on what's going on around the major leagues. And last season you were looking at Girona, the great start that they'd had. And all of a sudden you were like, Jesus, like we're 7 weeks in and Girona are top. And they're unbeaten. And then they go and they get thumped by Real Madrid. Or they got, at home, they got hammered by Real. And you think, okay, well, that'll be the end of them then. They'll just drift off back into mid-table. And then they rattle off 5 wins in a row and a draw and then 3 more wins in a row. And all of a sudden, you're 18 games in. And they're second, but they're second by the smallest of margins. And you're like, hey, this is weird, but they're going to fall apart. Like, they are going to fall apart. This team can't get, top 4. But incredible persistence from them and a willingness to just overcome any bad result that threatened to send them into a spiral. Like, the only time they lost back-to-back games was away to Real Madrid and away to Athletic Bilbao. That's 2 of the harder away fixtures for anybody. Like, Barcelona have often lost that tandem of fixtures back-to-back. And yet they just kept coming back for more. And they only lost twice at home, which was huge for them. They lose at home to Real. They lost at home to Villarreal very late in the season. The title was gone. And it was going to be, a case of, do they finish second or do they finish third? They end up finishing third. They're 5 clear of Atletico Madrid and 13 clear of everybody else in the league. But you mentioned certain players doing really well for them last season. And obviously Dovbyk was the big guy up front, and he's gone. And Alex Garcia, who was the main man in the middle of the park, he's gone. But they also had some key players in on loan. Savinho. He was within the City football sphere. They took him away. He's gone. Jan Couto played an important role for them. He's gone. Eric Garcia, Barcelona, took him back, so he's gone. And Pablo Torre is gone. That's a lot of important players in your squad just vanishing in one summer. And you're only getting money in for 2 of them. So now you've got to replace 6 players, but you've only received money for 2. Now, to their credit, I thought they used their money quite well in the summer. Kreshki, the Czech defender, looks a player. Abel Ruiz is a fun player. They bring in Alejandro Frances, the centre-back from Zaragoza, who's good. Yasser Asprilla, though, was the one that caught my eye because I'd been watching him for Watford and I was very, very interested in him as a potential Liverpool signing down the line. It hasn't been brilliant for him since going there, but he's still only 21. He's, adapting to a new league. But I think he's a really good player and a really promising one. When you look at their squad, though, there are a few very interesting players. And you mentioned Yangel Herrera, obviously another one that was in the City football group for a long time. Had loans at New York City, Huesca, Granada, which is kind of where everybody started to take notice of him, Espanyol, Girona, and finally Girona were able to get him on a permanent deal. But the 2 that really stand out to me are the 2 fullbacks, Arnar Martinez and Miguel Gutierrez. And with us looking for a new left back in the summer, all going to plan, Miguel Gutierrez is one that really does stand out to me as someone we should be looking at. And then if Trent were to leave, there's not many better young right backs out there than Arnar Martinez. He can also cover at centre-back, but he is primarily a right back. What do you make of them, and is there anyone else in that squad that stands out to you?
Chronic migraine is 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for adults with migraine with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It prevents, on average, 8 to 9 headache days a month versus 6 to 7 for placebo.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Ask your doctor and visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Disney Plus. Game on, because ESPN Plus content is available on Disney Plus. You can watch your favorites from Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus together like never before. With ESPN Plus, unwrap a full day of NBA action on Christmas Day. Tip off the festivities with the Spurs and Knicks, followed by the Mavs and Timberwolves. Then a clash between the Lakers and Warriors, followed by the 76ers and Celtics. And finally, the Nuggets face off against the Suns, all streaming December 25th. Then with Hulu, watch the terrifying sci-fi thriller Alien Romulus, where a group of young space colonizers come face to face with the ultimate horror. And on Disney Plus, follow the adventures of 4 kids across the galaxy as they meet unlikely allies and enemies in Star Wars: Skeleton Crew, starring Jude Law. All of these and more now streaming and available with a bundle subscription. Visit DisneyPlus.com for details. Terms apply.
Add excitement to your holidays with Ohio Lottery Holiday Scratch-Offs, including $1 holiday cash and $5 holiday lucky times 10, or holiday bonus millions with a 200 times multiplier and a $2 million top prize. Plus, enjoy second chance drawings where you can win 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times the price of your ticket. Scratch-Offs make the perfect gift, and best of all, there's no wrapping required. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Play responsibly.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
I mean, stand out in terms of we've seen what they are capable of previously. I think that's fair to say. Anna Danjuma is a good example of that. He can be very hit and miss, and this year has not been a good season, let's say, so far. Christian Stuani is just obviously going to be coming on as sub for the last 15 minutes of games, even when it's 2042. That's just his role now for the next 3 or 4 decades, probably. Who else they got? Donny van de Beek. Obviously, we know all about Donny van de Beek, and it's another opportunity, chance, possibility for him to regain some sort of footballing, what should we say, relevance? Is that fair? Is that too harsh? I think after his United spell, that might be probably the right word for it. And yeah, Gutierrez, you mentioned. I can't remember which one of us it was now. One of us brought him up for the pod.
We both had him, did we?
Did we? We both have him, yeah. So I think there are still some limitations in the squad. Like even last season, Paulo Gazzaniga as your first choice goalkeeper. He played well in terms of shot stopping and all that kind of thing, but he's a very limited goalkeeper. And that was the case even last season. He's already made a few mistakes this term. And yeah, maybe the story of last year was never going to be enough just to maintain them, even if they used the money that they got in as well as they possibly could. But I do think that there's enough here that they've got 3 or 4 more players who might go on and do some really decent stuff. Like Jean Solis, they've played a few times in La Liga this year. Asprilla, you've already mentioned. Frances is obviously quite young still as well. And then people like Bojan Miovski, who plays up front, he's been there or almost there for getting a couple of big moves over the last sort of 2-3 years. So I think there's still possibility for them to go on and achieve individually. Brian Hill is another one who's really highly rated in Spain. He's never been a player that I particularly enjoy or admire, but a lot of people like his sort of level of technical ability. So again, you've got potential there for some of the squads to go on and do well. But as we can see from the results this year, they've been kind of 2 long winless runs already this year, and it is very difficult, obviously, for them to pick themselves up to go and midweek weekend, when most of these players will not have had anything like that for most of their careers. Of course, a few of them do, like Daily Blind or whatever, but generally speaking, not most of them. Certainly not as first choice players anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, they do have a decent balance to their squad. You know, they've got a bunch of players kind of in that mid-20s kind of sweet spot, like Viktor Shankov, like Yangel Herrera, Arnaud Danjuma. They've got this really promising group of young players, Solis, Asprilla, Martinez, Gutierrez. And then they've got kind of older heads just kind of in the squad, whether they play every game or they're just there for, you know, for the experience of and the mentorship. Like you mentioned, Daley Blind, Donny van de Beek. He's an experienced player, but he's also one with a huge point to prove of his own. I think David Lopez, the, you know, kind of old war dog of a centre-back who is tremendously talented at booting people up in the air. Like, it's a joy to watch when he comes charging out of position, knowing he can't do much of anything to, you know, to actually stop a player other than boot him up in the air, and just fully commits to it. It's great to see. And Stuani, like you said, like this man has made some sort of deal with somebody. And at 38, he is just still going strong. And I love to see it because, like, let's not forget, he was struggling with Middlesbrough. He made the move to Girona. Everybody was like, who the fuck are Girona? He just bangs in goals no matter what division they were in. Like, he gets 21 and then 19 in back-to-back La Liga seasons, having gotten 4 in the Premier League and not been able to be a regular starter because he just couldn't live up to the level. Goes down with them. He's brilliant for them, gets them back up. And then he kind of moves into this more kind of squad role, coming off the bench late in games to give them a goal or give them an old head to hold the ball up. And he's still doing it really well. And, you know, 9 goals in each of the last 2 seasons in the league, already 4 this season. I bet he didn't think he'd be playing in the Champions League when he went to Girona. But here he is.
Yes, although not for much longer, I would suggest. Like league form, as we said, has been hit and miss. They're very, very middle of the road in terms of league position, stats, numbers, where they are in relation to points above them and behind, that sort of thing. They're mid-table as it gets, basically. Champions League-wise, 1 win from 5. So it's still feasible. They could climb up from 30th to 24th or top 24 to get a playoff place. But basically, when you look at the fixtures they've got left, Liverpool, AC Milan and Arsenal, they've kind of had an opportunity, to be honest.
Exactly.
You know, there's a chance that they could get something because 2 the games against Liverpool and Arsenal are at home. But away to Milan is probably, let's say, the easiest game, and that's not going to be an easy one for them. So, if we look across the board at Champions League only, what they've achieved, let's have a quick look as we go. Expected goals, they are 20th. They've scored 4 from an XG, combined XG from all their matches of 6.7, so underperforming there. Shots on target, not on the first few pages, which is probably not a good sign. 26th.
Yeah.
Not ideal, not a very good shot conversion rate either, on just over 8% for that. Big chances created, I cannot imagine they'll be too high up for that. 24th. So they're kind of verging on just the sort of line, let's say, where you need to be. Touches in the opposition box 25th again, so possession 1 in the final third. It's not high. Can't even see them on this list now.
I remember looking at their fixtures, because obviously when we drew them, I looked at everybody's fixtures that we were going to play. And I remember thinking they had a really hard start away to PSG, which they lost. But then I thought, there's a 4-game run there where they could get 10 to 12 points. And that will get them into the top 24 and a spot in the playoff. Because I expected them to lose their last 3, us, Milan away, and Arsenal. But they lose at home to Feyenoord. It's a bad result. Like, I know City drew to Feyenoord, but like Red Bull Salzburg went and wiped the floor with Feyenoord. This is not a great Feyenoord team by any stretch.
2 own goals in that game as well, by the way.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, just the masters of their own demise in that one. Having gone 1-0 up as well, by the way.
And Feyenoord had a penalty. Missed it as well. And they got it back to 2-2 as well, which, you know, these are all things that concern me. But then they play Slovan Bratislava and they beat them. And I'm thinking, okay, well, look, 9 points might be enough. And maybe you can get a point at home to Arsenal on the final day, because maybe Arsenal are already qualified and don't need anything out of that one. Then they go and they get hammered by PSV Eindhoven. And then they lose at Sturm Graz. I'm just like, that's your chance gone. Like, that is it for you in this competition this year. Now, look, it may well be that Liverpool go over there with a heavily rotated team and Girona beat us, but they've made it very hard for themselves to qualify beyond here. And that will be the end of their European journey. They still do have a decent crack at maybe getting Europa League or Conference League for next season. You know, they are in 9th, but they're only 2 points behind Real Sociedad, who, after a poor start to the season, have clambered their way back up the table. They're 4 points behind Villarreal in the Europa League spot. So there is possibilities for them to be in Europe again next season. But my question to you would be, do you think they'll be going there with the same manager? Because I think Michel has done a brilliant job there. And I'm a little bit surprised that after last season, there wasn't maybe a big offer that came his way from a Premier League club who were looking to make a move. Like, for example, a West Ham United. They wanted to move away from David Moyes and his brand of football. And rather than go for someone like Michel, they basically appointed a Spanish David Moyes. That move has not worked out, and they may look to move on from him soon. But do you think Michel is someone that they would look at, or you know, do you think he'd suit the Premier League? I do think he'd suit the Premier League. I don't think that's a problem. He's quite a diligent manager. He's pretty good at working out opposition. His in-game use last year was pretty decent as well. I mean, at the end of this season, they have 1 year left on his contract. That's not, unget-outable by any stretch of the imagination. He'll also have been there for like 5 years at that point, or 4 years, which is in Spain quite a long time, to be perfectly honest. I think it would probably be for his own career quite important that he stayed this year, just to get himself the experience of obviously managing in Europe in the Champions League, see what that is like, as well as the fact that obviously you've done a really good job in the first place and you want to see it through. How far can you go, kind of thing. And I think this year is probably showing that there is a ceiling there, which they broke through last year, but to do it over and over again is a really, really difficult thing. I don't doubt for a minute that at least 3 or 4 clubs in Spain would be keen to take him as well. Like, there's usually quite a bit of churn in La Liga, so at some point there will be an opening for not necessarily a team that's above them in the table this year, but a team who is particularly or historically bigger than them. Like, let's take Sevilla, for example. Like, if the Sevilla job was to come available because they're, again, absolute crap and Harry Garcia's there and thereabouts, but basically they're not going anywhere. There's a lot of problems in that club that they need to sort out. I could see that they would look at somebody like him or Betis or whoever is trying to get back in and has habitually been in Europe. But I would be also very keen to see him go abroad, whether that's to... I think Premier League probably would suit him best, to be honest. And obviously we have quite a strong train of Spanish managers coming over here. But even if it was in Serie A, to be honest, I think that would suit him as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was some suggestion that if Pep was to leave City, that he would be one that they would look at because they already have him within the City football group. But that's a pretty big job to get as your first kind of job in England. And it's certainly a huge step from Girona. How many managers, little pop quiz for you here, how many managers in Spain have been in their current job longer than him?
Wow. Okay. 2, 3. So go 4.
So we have Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid. We have Manuel Pellegrini at Real Betis. And we have Imanol at Real Sociedad. Now, Carlo Ancelotti joined the same year as he did. So he would have been the 4th. But everybody else has changed. Which, like you said, there's always a bit of churn.
Love a bit of churn in Spain.
They do. It's become what Serie A... Well, Serie A still is to some extent, but it really is a magnificent thing. Like even just the this past summer, there was about 7 different jobs that were changed. They do love to get rid of a manager, and I think it's always a really good sign when a manager lasts 4 to 5 years in a league like Spain. Like for Real Sociedad, 6 years there, that's a lifetime. Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid, forgetting the fact for a second that it's Atletico Madrid, the most chaotic club of our lifetimes in Spain. You consider what they were like in the 90s and 2000s. Before he got there, it was like a new manager every 6 weeks. For him to be there as long as he has, that's just freakish. But Pellegrini, I think, is a year longer. And Imanol is 3 years longer. That's it. Like, there's nobody else that's been there a long time in Spain. And when you can do that and have job security, it does speak volumes to the work that you're doing. Right. So from our point of view here, Karl, like we said earlier, we've won 5 of 5. So we're in a very different place in the Champions League than they are. Whereas they currently sit in 30th position, we sit in 1st. And we can afford to drop points. Like, we could draw and likely still be top because Inter Milan would need to win their game by 5 clear goals to go ahead of us in the goal difference column. So what approach are we taking here? Are we going over to win this game and basically wrap ourselves up in the Champions League and make those 2 fixtures in January meaningless? Is a draw a positive result? Does it matter to you? Like, is this just because we were of the opinion that the Real game was largely insignificant, and this one now is even more insignificant in my view. But what would your approach be here?
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.